Roby and welcome to my workshop.
You're probably thinking I'm back from the hardware store, and ordinarily, you'd be right. But Valerie wanted a car out of the driveway and I had to move mine. I was blocking her, so I thought I'd just put it here. No constraints here. Listen, we got a lot to do today. We got trim and drawers and we're gonna hit the ground running. So come on inside and strap on. We're moving.
Let's build a new router table. Trim and drawers. We're gonna jump into this first thing. I've got a piece of maple that has some figure. We're gonna cut this to 36-inch lengths and then we're gonna mill it into strips for trim. For a flat face, we'll go to the jointer, and yes, I need to shorten that line up a little bit. I think a little tension would keep it from jumping around so much. You know the drill. After the face is flat, we take it to the planer to parallel it up. A quick pass at the jointer brings the edge to square. The strips are 3/4 of an inch strong. We want enough to completely cover the edge of the plywood, but we don't want so much that we can't trim off the excess when we're finished. Needless to say, with strips this thin, you will be using a push stick. After we make our cut on the table saw, we will return to the jointer to square up that edge and make sure that it's absolutely flat. The table saw does a great job, but it's not a jointer. The jointer is far more accurate in keeping an edge perfectly straight. Finally, I've got 3 strips for the back panel that are very thin, and I'll go ahead and dimension those to thickness on the planer.
Well, I've got this top piece up here and I'm putting the trim on, and it's right at 36 inches, so that's going to work real well. But I have a bit of a bow in my plywood, and that's never happened before. So we will be putting a bead of glue. Don't need too much, but don't starve it either. The glue will be doing the long-term heavy work. On my piece up here, take him. Now the first edge I want to be right here. Now I've got a little overlap on either side. That doesn't matter, we'll clean that up later. But I want this to be flush because this is the top and the next piece comes over top of that. Now don't go doing right there. You'll split the wood. Give yourself a good 2 inches, and we'll drop ourselves a 1 1/4 inch brad right there. Now after we get him put in place, we'll take a clamp and hold him in. Now that'll keep some of the stress off that nail. Now the next one I need to come down to about here, and I'll put another nail in. And I'll keep doing that, and slowly we'll bend the board around, or the trim around to where it needs to be. Now we'll give this glue a little time to set up. Well, I'm putting the front trim on, and I've got the first piece here already, and it's behaving pretty well. What we will do, same procedure we had before. Point to note, we're working from the outside and in, and that's primarily to keep you from seeing any end grain. And that means we put this piece on first, next piece goes here, and of course the bottom, and then we come up and frame into this way, and then of course we move into that. Now that's a lot of inside cuts, but that's okay because you and I are real good at this. The point I'm trying to make is this whole technique is to keep us from seeing the end grain, which with furniture makers, you want to see as little as possible. It's almost considered a failure if you have a piece of furniture with a lot of end grain, and that's unless it's a butcher block table. Okay, flush on top, and we'll start at the top and then we'll coax it into alignment as soon as we get a few nails in place. These are 1 1/4 inch brads, and again, don't go nailing right on the end. All you'll do is cause yourself some heartache because you'll split the board. Now I can come right to the end on this one because I've got a lot of extra here. And there we go. Now we'll just keep going until we're done.
I have my trim on and I'm starting to look at the electrics. I'm going to put a plug in right in the side here, and that'll be where we plug the unit in. I will also have my unit, my on-off switch right there, and that will be flush to the surface, which means I need to have a backer board in the back. And if that's the case, I need to have it recessed. Now I've got some stock here that I made dados in before. I'm going to use that. We will go directly to these side walls and then we'll do it that way. And I think that'll work out real good. Stick with me. I'll show you how it's going to lay out.
There are occasions where you just don't want to measure, and when I say that, I mean by putting a rule on it, reading the dimension, then transferring that dimension over to the piece. Just put the piece on where you want it to go and let the furniture make the mark.
I've got my piece, I've got him marked right there, and what I want to do is take my line around the corner, because if you don't, it's going to be impossible to get evened up on the table saw, because this isn't a measure, this is a transfer. The other thing I'd point out is I have marked on this side which side I keep and which side I get rid of, which is important. Because at the end of the day, that line just barely needs to disappear. I'm going to mark my plug, and I'll put this, keep the cords out of the way, and I'll give myself enough room to get past this edge right there, and I'll mark this right here and that right there, cleaning that up with a saw. And this, I think, is going to need more room than that, so I'm going to need to, part of what I have to do is make sure that I can get this up and around and then back out this side. So I don't want to crimp the cord too much, but at the same time I still want to get enough, because this one has to come out this side, because I want the cord to come out the front. There's going to be a little bit of a bend here. I'll put him right about there. Okay, and I have this one marked down here already. So I'll drill out these 2 holes. This also defines the length of the bottom of my box, so I'll cut this off with the crosscut sled saw before I do the rest. All right, you can start to see what I'm trying to do right here. I want this mounted right about there and flush right at the top of that seam right here. So that's kind of what I'm looking at with regards to this. Now, this plug right here has to go through here because the router's over here. So I've got to get it close enough that I can do this and still mount it. Now, the plug that comes out has to come out right here. And the reason is I don't want it on this side, because if I put this up against another cabinet, that won't work. Of course, it does go out over there. That'd be silly. And I don't think I could get it down here because my router storage is going to be bits that come out this direction. So I think we're looking at right here, and it's just going to have to tuck up underneath in this area over here. So we may be building out a box right in this area behind it to house the cording.
This is the hole that allows the cord to go to the router. We'll drill the holes to mount the switch. This is the hole that allows the cord to go to the router.
All right, we got our template set up there, and that's what we're going to use to drill the hole into the side. It's a pretty fair measure.
I've got some stock here for the front face, and I need to put a hole in it for the switch. Now, the switch has a radius on each of the corners, and I'll drill a hole to mimic that, and then I will cut out the rest of it with a jigsaw.
I'm going to clean up these edges with a 1/4 inch round over bit. Well, I've completed some of the pieces to my electrical, and I've just got them sitting in place. This face plate is of the same wood that all the drawer fronts for the router bits are going to be made out of. And I have my electrical on-off switch mounted just flush, and that's where the stop will go. I think this will be really good. I have a hole here. This is where the cord is going to come out that you will plug into the wall or an extension cord. Again, I don't want it on the side. If I ever incorporate this into a bank of cabinets, I want to be able to do that, and if I do, the cord's going to be in the way. So here we are. Now let's take this out. There's my box again. It's mounted with 2 screws, and the cord goes to the back. It will go all the way to the back, wrap around the dowel, and then come forward. I don't need that much cord, and I don't want to be pulling on this. I don't want a whole lot of cord to come out when I pull on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a dowel in the back. We're going to put a cover plate on this. We're going to put it all in with screws. They're going to be visible, and I know it may not be pretty, but I want to be able to take this apart. Primarily, if this switch should fail, and I've had them fail before, I don't want to have to tear this out or cut this out in order to replace this switch. So let's get started with a dowel in the back and the cover plate, and then we'll start moving forward, getting all these pieces put into place. A lot of screws, a lot of pre-drilling, a lot of countersinking. I have marks in each of these corners, and they don't have to be any place special, but they have to miss this, and since we're pre-drilling, we're probably not going to split that. Well, this came out great, and I'm really happy with it, but now it's time to focus on the drawers. Now, on this side, I'm going to make these drawers to fit my router bits, and I think 4 drawers may be enough. These are bigger than my typical boxes. So we'll have the first 2 will be the 1/2 inch bits, the next 2 will be 1/4 inch. We're going to be making the bases out of 3/4 inch plywood. We're going to put a 1/4 inch plywood piece of junk on the bottom to keep the bit from falling through, and we'll have a drawer face on top. The drawers will rest on slides that we'll put inside the cabinet. They're going to be simple as simple, and we'll have a face right here out of the same piece of wood right there. I don't think I'm going to have a rail coming up to reinforce this. I don't think I need to. The majority of the time this drawer is going to be sitting on the rails in the cabinet, which are continuous or on the ground. I've built 2 other router tables using this technique, and these drawers, they're going to work just fine. Let's get over to the drill press and start drilling holes out. We've got to get a pattern that helps us maximize our spacing. I've got my first 2 holes drilled right here, and I wanted to point out something. This is the rack that I'm going to be using for my largest bits, and These are big ones. I don't think you'll see too many as big as this. This is a cove cutting bit. It is a monster. This is a huge piece of steel. I'm using a hex pattern here, and if you've seen the way they pack certain types of fruit, they'll use a hex pattern instead of a standard grid. And that's because you can get a denser layout. And it's kind of proving true right here. I don't think I could have gotten these two that close on a tighter grid layout. And the same is going to be true when I come off the angles here. So it's just 30 degrees, and that's easy enough to do when you lay out your marks. I've got a 1/2 inch brad point bit in my drill press, and it's just a matter of finding the point and drilling the hole. The majority of my bits are more straight up type flush cutting bits, and I have some patterns. But if you'll look, these are 2 bits side by side. For the most part, this is going to work out just fine. So for the other drawer, for the 1/2 inch shank bits, I'm going to use a 1 1/4 inch spacing on a standard grid. Well, I'm on the 1/4 inch shanks, and I'm using a grid pattern for that. I've got 5 across and I think 13 up. That's going to be a lot of storage. Now, I'm going to make both of these the same, so in one of the 2 holes that I'm going to be drilling, I have pre-drilled and put in 2 screws, and I'll come back after this is all done, and I'll drill out these 2 holes last, but this will allow me to get both of them done at the same time. We're getting ready to put the back on right here, and I'm going to just put a little glue down. This isn't, the only trick about this, and you don't need much glue, just enough to hold it in place, keep it steady. The nails will do a lot of the work. That's probably enough. Now I have had made marks where I'm going to put my nails. So I'll get this down. The first 2 are the most important because it's going to move around a little bit until it settles down. And these are just 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch brads. Well, it looks like you need a router table to build a router table. And that's because I have decided to put sides on my drawers, and I need a stopped rabbet to do that. And in all honesty, a router table is one of the best things in the world to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my piece, and on this side I will come over and then pull away, and this stop right here, which was on my drill press now here, will help me do that. I'll take this up, flip him up, push this down. On the other side, where I have to start here, I will use this to pivot, come into the table, and then push forward. I will be using this as a means to push the piece back and forth, keeping my fingers a little bit farther away. I have my shop vac hooked up back here. It looks pretty hokey, but that's the way it is. And we're not taking this in one pass. We'll take this in several passes. Taking the full amount out of this at one time is a little bit more than you should ask of a bit. So I'm going to move this back in multiple passes, and I've got a piece of stock that I can use to measure that. So come on over here, let's take a look, and I'll show you how this works.
My front faces are cut to width, and I have the rabbets, which allows me to trim the bottoms to their final width. Now you probably saw me reach under the saw. I have put it in bypass mode, and the reason is that glue is still a little damp, and I have triggered the stop on a saw stop when the glue was wet and also with wet wood. And that's just a financial burden I'm not willing to bear right now. So keep that in mind if you're accelerating the process.
I've got an old piece of poplar stock here, and sometimes it's easier not to fight. Just let gravity hold these pieces together. And if we just line them up real nice, then I can make my mark right there. And it just takes a little bit of a tick, and then you know, I'll cut this piece down the middle and fold it up. I'll have both sides of my drawer.
I'll never get another chance at the inside of these caddies, so I'll go ahead and sand them down now. I've been doing this for about 30 years, and as you can see, I still have not perfected the art of holding the piece steady on the table. We'll drill a hole for the knob, and I think in the center of the face is just fine, and there's no point in not using the blue tape. I have already sanded this, and I don't want to have to sand again to get rid of the pencil marks.
Well, one of the nice things about having a knob is it gives you something else to hold on to. Now, these are nothing special. I get them in a 10-pack, and they're actually from a past remodeling job. Now, when I was looking through stores, I only had 5, and I need quite a few more than that. So I'll end up either trying to match these or buy new later on when it's time. We're set up here, and we're getting ready to build out the first drawer. Now, we're going to be putting a bead of glue here and a bead of glue here. And this is my side. I've decided to go ahead and do this. So we'll have sides right here. That way I can hold on to the front of it, and I won't be putting a lot of pressure on this joint. Additionally, it gives me the ability to put glue here, let the moment connection run through this, and it'd just be stronger all in all. So I've got the dados cut here, and I want to put this in place and line him up and get everything right. That's the reason for this clamp, because I'm going to be pushing pretty hard against this. But I don't want to be holding this here and trying to get it to line up. So I'm going to clamp this to the front. Now I've got a spacer right here I'm putting like this. That is going to take this clamp and it's going to turn it a little bit this way, and it puts the pressure, and I've already tried this out several times. It puts the pressure on the bottom. This is a very square edge down there. And what it will do, you probably saw that, it moved it back a little bit. Now, and when I come back here, it's very square. What's the point here? Well, it's also extremely square up here. These joints are extremely tight, and that's what's important. If you've done everything right and it's square, it'll stay square. But if it's not, if something's out, you want your joints to be square, especially the ones that are doing all the work. This joint right here is going to be doing all the work. When I pick it up from this knob and hold it up and I've got bits out here, it's going to want to bend. If this is the only connection I have, it isn't going to last that long. This is going to last a long time. So this joint needs to be just right. So that's the reason for all the effort. Now that I have it assembled, I'm telling you now that once I put the nails in the front up here, it's locked in. So I'm getting ready to take it apart and put the glue back down there. But I wanted to show you what was going on here. Let me move this up a little bit more. There we go. So we'll put a bead of glue right there. And we're going to put some in this dado right here too. I'm not going to be too chintzy with it. We'll clean up later. Get him in place. Now I need a bead of glue all the way down here. Now I've got to get a bit of surface area right here, so that's going to work out real nice. Now we're going to get our joints to line up. If I got a little squeeze out, I'm going to live with it. Now let's give him a little bit of pressure here. Come on now. All right, that did good. We're double check for square. Good.
Push this tight. Now, come around this way or I'll get a picture over here. I have a spacer here, and there's a reason. If I go down like this and shoot at an angle, I'm going into the table. This gives me a little bit of elevation to keep that from happening. So, sorry about that. Make sure we're tight. Everything's good. There we go. All right, there we are. That's pretty good. I'll clean up the squeeze out and we'll do the other side. Well, I've got my drawer here and I filled it up with bits and a lot of storage in here. And this hex pattern works great for the larger bits. So we'll put the drawer in here. And it fits real nice. I'm very happy with that. But we got 2 drawers to put in. As a matter of fact, we got 3-4 more drawers to put in. We need to have a means of putting the runners in. So if I take this drawer out, what I've done is I've taken a piece of scrap. I put that piece of scrap right there and rub it. Matter of fact, you might see the shadow line right here. It is just a 1/16 inch tall. And that's what I want to do. So I'm going to put it right there. That's going to define where my runner is. So if I were to take the runner, which I have pre-drilled and countersunk, and I put it right there, you know it's going to be too tall. So we're not going to do that. We've got a piece of scrap right here. Put it in just like that. Make sure everything, as a matter of fact, make sure you don't have any sawdust in there. It doesn't take much sawdust to throw this stuff off. Okay, so we're in there good and flush. Everything is fine. We're going to take a pair of vice grips with pads on it so we don't mar our surface up too much. We're going to come in here and give it a squeeze. Now that's not going to go anywhere, but still, be a little careful with how you take this out. You don't want to throw it off by pulling it up. Now we can take our runner and we just put it right in there and screw it in place. I do want to have a certain measure, so I'm going to make him just shy of the end right there. I also don't have 3 hands, so I'm going to take a set of F-clamp. 1 F-clamp should all I need, and I'm going to hold him in place with that. You still almost have to stand on your head to do this. Now, I'm just shy of this, so I will not impact my front piece as it comes even with this. And I'm tight against this clamp, so I can take my drill and start sinking these in. And you can see here I don't have a whole lot of room. I probably should have made this a little wider. There's the first one. And we'll do the last one. And then the rest will be easier. There you go.
With a little perseverance, all the drawer runners are in. And boy, they close just fine.
Well, the router bit caddies are complete in the table, and I have put a screw in the back of each caddy to index it to the back of the case. So when you push them in, they line up perfectly. They look great. But now we've got to look to the other side of the router table. That's where we're going to put 5 drawers in place. I have a board right here. It's the same board we used for the caddies. We're going to use that for the faces of our drawers. Now these are going to be drawers. They're going to have backs on them. I am going to make these so I can put loose items in, pull the drawer out, and not have it fall out the back. The router bits were in holes, and that makes all the difference. Now, I have my face stock right here. It's from the same board that we put the other faces on the caddy. Now I have my side stock right here. This is some old poplar. I've already cut it to length, but it's still rough cut and far too thick. So what we're going to do, we're going to mill these up and we're going to turn them into dimensioned pieces. And the first step is to take it to the jointer. That way we'll get one face that's perfectly flat. From there, we go to the planer, and that takes the other face and makes it parallel to the first. After that, we're back to the jointer, where we get one of our flat faces and we get a perfectly 90-degree edge on the bottom. And from there to the table saw, where we parallel it up again. After all that's done and considerable sawdust, we'll start assembling these drawers. And we'll start that process right now.
Dados on the drawer faces are the same as for the drill bit caddies, so we won't go into detail on those.
I've got my boards all lined up on here. These are the sides for all three drawers. We want them to be the same. So what I've got here, I've got the rough edges there. This is all lined up perfectly. We're going to cut them all at one time. There is a dado that goes on the bottom of the drawer all the way around, and that is to receive the bottom plate. Now we're using 1/4-inch plywood, which is a little bit of a funny thing because there's no way this is a 1/4 inch. In fact, I've got my dado head stacked in there because it gives me a flat bottom on my dados, whereas my other blade doesn't. But I can't stack any other blades with it because it'll be too thick for this. So what I end up doing is I end up making a cut, moving the rip fence over a 1/16 of an inch and making the other one. Gives me a semi-loose fit on 3/16, and that's where we are with that. Now, I have put my blade out so that I've got a 1/4 of an inch between the edge of this blade and the rip fence, and that is because I need a 1/4 of an inch meat on the bottom here to hold the plate in. Additionally, it's a 1/4 of an inch tall. So there's the blade. I'm going to make the cut, move it a 1/16, make the cut again, and then we test. And you always test your cuts. Otherwise, you end up with more pieces in the burn pile. Go that way. Well, when I milled up all my sides and backs, I milled them up to the same thickness. Now, that same thickness was about a 1/2 inch. And I have a 1/2 inch in my dado stack, and I have made a number of test cuts that you see here. Well, nothing is perfect, but that's okay. That's what shims are for. So right now I've got a shim in my dado stack, and I'm going to be making a test cut. And as you can see, I'm starting to run out of places to cut. But I got one more, so let's see where we go with this. It's this one. This is the back. That fits in real good. It's a slip fit, which is what I want. As a matter of fact, it fits in, but then it won't move after the fact. Glue will swell that up and it'll be perfect. Now, I'm going to take my backs here, and this is where I do have to get a little bit careful because there's an inside and an outside. I just can't go gangbanging on this. So I'm going to put a groove right in the back of this, and we'll start getting these things organized. I want at least a 1/2 inch on the back here to give myself enough meat. So I'll get set up on this saw, and we'll start making some dados. You may have noticed I had a few more of these back pieces than I originally needed. Well, I do need them. The material for the backs isn't quite as tall as my sides here. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to stack it up like you've seen here. And when I put this together and glue it, it'll be solid. I'm not concerned with that. I don't even have to clamp it. but I do have to mark it. So I've got my mark right there. I'll take these to the rip saw and I'll rip 3 of them out, and then I'll have the pieces for that. This is one of the segments that actually goes on top here, and I've used that to give myself a rough measure. Now, I'm a little bit shy, so there's going to be a little wiggle room, and that's okay. I'm not counting on this for structural support. It's going to line up through the fact that these grooves are all inside here. It's going to line it up real solid, and a touch of glue, it won't go anywhere, and it'll also square up the box. So it's time to go ahead and make that cut, and I've got a piece of stock right here, so we'll just run it on through.
It's time to assemble these drawers, and I'm going to go ahead and ramp up the speed and put on the tunes.
Well, the drawers are done, and I think they came out pretty well. A lot of repetition here, so I've shown you one. They're all pretty much the same, so there's no reason to beat that horse. Another tip I didn't show you, I've got a screw here in the back, and it seems a little lengthy. I guess I could have made these an inch longer. But if you will put a screw in the back, that gives you the ability to adjust those so that they sit straight in the back and it all lines up real nice. I've done that for all these drawers, and when they're pushed in, they're just right. Now, what are we going to do on the next episode? We're going to focus on dust collection. That means we get a door up front here. Now, for some reason, everybody wants to put a plexiglass door on the front, and we will do the same, although I'm wondering why I'm going to that level of trouble. It just seems to be the thing to do. But we will go ahead and drill a few holes in the plexiglass up front that will give the dust collection system the ability to kind of pull it to the back, because you'll have some airflow there, you'll have some airflow here. Now, we also need to focus on the back side here, because we need to get to this fence. This is the chute right here. When it's oriented in this direction, that means that this unit's going to be a freestanding unit. We'll drop a line from the top and connect in this way and also collect the fence. If we orient it this way, we'll probably end up building this into an existing cabinet system. So we need to be able to do both. And I'll show you how we're going to approach this next time on Roby's Workshop.